Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm delighted to co-host the second part of a webinar series featuring the award-winning Italian photojournalist, Bruno D'Amicis. This series has been brought to you today by a partnership between Earthwatch Europe and Canon Europe. Earthwatch is an international environmental NGO with science at its heart. Our mission is to connect people with the natural world, monitor the health of our natural resources, and help people take action to have a positive impact. In doing so, we work with a variety of partners who support our aims, like Canon Europe. Canon has generously sponsored the Wild Cities Photo Competition. This is a UK amateur photo competition which celebrates green spaces and the wild inhabitants, and it is inspired by our Tiny Forest program, where we plant small, tennis-sized wood forests in urban areas to help mitigate the effects of climate change and increase nature connection for local communities. This competition is all about getting outdoors and reconnecting with nature, with the aim of inspiring hope for the future and generating a call to action to create more urban green spaces. Canon is kindly donating £5 for each photo submission towards our Tiny Forest program. So we invite everyone to get out and get snapping. That said, it is my pleasure today to introduce fellow Italian Bruno D'Amicis. A nature enthusiast since his childhood, Bruno has been a full-time nature photographer since 2004, his main focus being the conservation of natural habitats and biodiversity. Bruno has traveled extensively in Europe, Asia, and Africa for his projects, working also in assignments for National Geographic. He is very proud to be a Canon ambassador. If you have watched the first part of this webinar series, you will know just how incredible his work is. So please relax and enjoy the second part of this wonderful presentation. Benvenuto Bruno, è un piacere averti con noi.
There is nothing more rewarding than getting to know the nature surrounding you, whether on vacation or just on an everyday basis, and be able to understand a little bit of the patterns, get to know the local, your neighbors, your wild neighbors, the local inhabitants. And the story that I picked today, it's an example of all of this. For those who haven't been with us on the previous webinar, I am a full-time photojournalist. I've been traveling extensively around the world. I've been almost 20 years in the business, 19 years to be precise. And I've seen quite a few wild and nice places and made many unforgettable encounters. But I treasure the most the experiences close to my home, which is in the Italian Central Apennines, in the very middle of the country, and specifically in the region called Abruzzo. It's one of the wildest places in my country. It has 3 national parks and a few nature reserves. A large part surface of its territory is protected, and we have a vast array of habitats and wild species such as bears and wolves, chamois, many birds, endemic amphibians, and a plethora of invertebrates and flower and trees. So whatever, the biodiversity gets really high and rich in this part of Europe. So again, of all the stories that I've been pursuing as a photojournalist, one which is very dear to me, it's about the old growth forest of the Central Apennines. It all starts with a scientific paper. Okay. Sorry, it's not slide. Yeah, okay. In the early 2000s, I came across a scientific paper written by a team of forest ecologists led by the guy you see in the picture, Professor Piovesan from the University of Viterbo, which is a university north of Rome, where they described the discovery of a patch of beech forest in the Italian Apennines, with trees which were dating more than 600 years of age. They basically took some samples and counted the rings on this carrot in jargon, where they could find out the multi-century age of these beech trees. If you consider that on the average, the beech tree reaches about 250, 300 years, this in the main areas of distribution, like in Germany or Northern Europe. The beech tree, it's a remarkable species. You can find it from Scandinavia and down to Sicily. So it has it covers the mountain slopes in many different latitudes and climatic areas. Still, it's a plant that requires cool nights, moisture, and it's a typical mountainous plant here in Italy. This forest, which hosted these very old elderly trees, were all within the Abruzzo, Lazio, and Molise National Park. It's in the very middle of the country. It's the oldest, together with the Gran Paradiso National Park in the Alps. This is the oldest protected area in Italy and one of the oldest in Europe, because it just turned out 100 years old. So in 1922, someone thought that preserving nature would be a better idea than exploiting it. And now it seems like something, that we all accept as an idea. But imagine just between two wars, in the heart of the Industrial Revolution, someone is thinking of preserving rather than destroying. So this is what we do today. What I can show you today is the aftermath of a great idea. Basically, in these mountains, you can see some villages. This is a Google picture. I don't know if you can see my pointer. You see these green belts. These forests are mostly located at a high altitude and on very steep slopes. Please, Monica, thumb up if everything is working, if you listen to me, because I'm basically talking to myself. So I hope,
yes, everything is working perfectly fine, Bruno. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is one of the forests we're talking about. You can see it's a rough terrain. The canopy, which is the top part of the trees and hence the forest, the ceiling of the forest, it's uneven. You can see some trees are standing out more than others. Looks like mushrooms. And this is why trees here have different age, and which is something non-common when you actually visit a commercially exploited forest, where trees are more or less coetaneous. They all have the same age because they are harvested or let grow with a specific commercial purpose. In this case, unmanaged forests allow trees to just follow their own inner cycle. I just spend one more second on this frame just to show you why these forests have survived in Italy. I mean, here we are between Rome and Naples, exactly halfway, in which together maybe reach more than 5 million people. And the area around, it is as wild as it can get in a country like Italy, with 60 million inhabitants, exploded for millennia, not centuries, millennia. So since at least the Neolithic, 7,000, 8,000 years ago, these mountains have been used for timber, for livestock grazing, for hunting. So it's not wilderness, but 100 years of conservation and the fact that these places were so difficult to reach, so awkward and uneasy to move around, and especially unrewarding in terms of timber, because to extract timber from a mountain so steep, you need a lot of work. This is done normally on a horseback, on a muleback. So it basically was not affordable. And this is why these forests have survived. As you can see in this other frame, the beech forest in some parts of this beautiful national park. I just a little advertisement plug in. I invite all of you to visit Central Italy, because it is one of the true gems of the natural heritage of Europe. And you can see a lot of wildlife, experience beautiful sceneries, and at the same time enjoy great food and great hospitality, so close brackets. Here you can see how the mountain forest of pine and dwarf pine melts with the beech forest. Of course, the deciduous forest turns red, yellow, in autumn, and therefore it's easier to split from the evergreen forest. Even these pine trees, which you see in the foreground, are several hundred years old. They themselves are remarkable plants surviving in this pocket of secondary wilderness. We'll call them like that. As I said, these were not places forgotten by man. There are everywhere traces of our presence. Some trees were carved to leave the mark behind of maybe a young shepherd bored on a summer evening. Some inscriptions have the date next to them, and they go back for 150 years before the Italian unification. So there is this kind of dendroarchaeology. I mean, if someone knows a bit of ancient Greek, dendros, it's the tree. So there is this very, very unstable, fragile archaeology history written on the tree bark, which of course is something that today we all know we shouldn't do. But 150 years ago, I think people were allowed to maybe leave some of the traces behind. When you enter this forest, when you overcome the steep slopes, the sweat, the pain, the labor of actually going up this very high ridges, you get to confront yourself with some true giants. These trees are huge, and they look completely different than the beech trees in commercial forests, which normally are like sticks, like poles, like these gray poles, all beautifully interspersed on a forest patch. Here it's a mess. You have trees on the ground and rocks and big trees and branches and silence, a lot of silence, especially in winter. These mountain forests are extremely, extremely quiet and seems devoid of life. So when I read this paper, I thought, wow, I mean, the oldest beech forest of Europe, it's literally 30 kilometers from my home. I have to do something about it. There were no good pictures. There was basically no interest. Plus, a few years later, someone said, why don't we nominate this forest for a World Heritage Site of UNESCO? I mean, a massive recognition for a natural area. And, the Dolomites are World Heritage Site. A lot of places around Europe are World Heritage Site. And for geology, outstanding biodiversity, or, for the fact that they remind us so well about the history of our planet and of our actions. So I thought, we must do something about this old growth forest. We must make people get to know them and love them. So I wrote I would say 20 pages stick project to the National Park, the Ministry of Environment. I involved a friend of mine, fellow photographer and mountaineer, Umberto Esposito. He's a great guide working in the Abruzzo National Park. And we decided to start documenting these magic places, and we had a lot of ambition to cover all the species. Eventually, the park saw the importance of our communication process, especially if this could help endorsing the nomination for the UNESCO of this forest, because back then was not granted yet. As I said before, they look easy, beautiful, graphically pleasing from outside. When you get lost literally in these places, it's a mess. Here, just in this frame, you can see trees of different ages, younger one, older one, snags, which are like these standing dead trees, very important for wildlife and the cycle of nutrients, and dead trees rotting on the ground. It's a difficult terrain, as we said. It's here. These trees have survived because no one was bothering to go there with the axe, cut, and especially what to do with a tree and how to bring it down to the villages. Trees, actually, beech trees, like many deciduous plants, don't die because of age. They die because of mechanical reasons. What do I mean with that? When they grow really, really tall and big, they are more exposed to wind, to snow, and that's how they can crack and fall during a winter storm, for example. At the very beginning, a beech tree in a young age, it's absolutely shielded against all the parasites. So the bark is pristine and smooth and silvery and doesn't show any defects. With age, the bark starts to get fissures and cracks, and that's where the fungi, like this tinder fungus, start to, you know, move their mycelium into the and open gaps in which, at the same level, invertebrates like wood boring beetles or bark beetles, you can see many holes on this old tree. This tree is actually alive, it's not dead. They create this first invasion. Eventually the tree, it's also killed by inside. But this is very important. On the right hand side in this frame, you can see actually laying on the ground a very old dead tree covered completely in mosses and fungi, and you can see almost disappears into the forest later. But these are also places which are a little bit scary. Why? All these areas are strictly protected. Therefore, there is no official trail to access them. And in fact, as a matter of fact, if you want to visit this forest, you need a special permits because they are considered wilderness areas. And so you have to move very carefully, avoiding to disrupt the quiet and the cycle of these trees, and finding your way. I mean, it's basically, as it gets as close as wilderness as anywhere else in Italy. I would say the second wildest place is the traffic on Rome in the morning, but this is actually very close to it. And why it is scary? Because you can sense this presence even in the quiet, silent atmosphere of the forest. You're in the shade of these giants. You can smell animals. Here you can see a small in the frame, but huge in reality, red deer stag going to drink in this little water pool. And this forest, like any thick foliage, hide their inhabitants. So to use a famous English motto, here literally you can't see the forest for the trees. And this was the first problem for us who wanted to make this complete portraiture and describe all the life and the animals and the highlights of these unique places. So you learn day after day. It was a massive endeavor. Consider that the picture that you see, which actually were collected within 10 years and with a peak of activity between 2014 and 2017. So 3 years of intense, almost daily presence in the beech forest. This also get to know the areas, the locals. As you can see, this big claw mark on the tree shows which is the real owner of this place. This is the brown bear, is the Apennine brown bear, a unique subspecies. We are talking about 50, maximum 60, maybe 70 individuals left in the whole world, only to be found here. And it's always a presence that makes your heart a bit faster. When you walk in a forest with bear presence, geography doesn't mean anything. The limits are only set by your mind. You feel that the shadows are darker, that the valley is longer, the forest is bigger, and your dreams basically are the limit. And I think even though it has a very important ecological role, and even more for conservation, because it's an umbrella species, you know, something that if you protect will help to, in turn, to preserve all the habitat around, because this animal has a big territory and a huge diet variety. This animal is also very important culturally. It is a symbol of identity for us living in these mountains, and it's something that makes your life more rich and mysterious, which is very rare nowadays in our era of all knowing, all wanting, and all getting somehow. As I said, this place can turn even a trained photojournalist like myself with a background in biology. I forgot to say for who's joining us today for the first time, but I'm also a biologist, so I have an academic background in this matter. Still, fantasy plays a role. You can encounter dinosaurs, crocodiles, ghosts, and even this, you know, the sound left at night or at twilight by a dormouse can turn into an eerie call and can turn you to panic. So basically, it is very important on one hand to have control of your actions and your timing. On the other hand, sometimes it's also nice to indulge into this magic, you know, dusky moment where things can happen, and fantasy plays such a big role. These forests are also very important for bats. About a dozen species actively, permanently uses them. Among them, a very rare species is the barbastel bat, which has the unique habit of sleeping and making nurseries, which is where the females give birth to young and raise the young under loose piece of barks. We will see other species that use this unique habitat, the most fragile one. Imagine a dead tree started losing scales of bark, and that we like almost, there is almost a grooming pleasure of just pull them off. And actually, apart from invertebrates and slugs and snails and spiders, you have bats and birds living under this bark. So everything as a role, everything has an importance in this place. In this picture, I don't know how many of you can spot the tawny owl singing. First, I heard the tawny owl, then I saw it. I saw the light on its tail, and I tried to frame. Here we are, of course, in the middle of the night with a very fast lens. I tried to frame the full moon just behind this big tree, and as you can see, some spider webs started to appear. So this is a place really of magic and wonder and scarce opportunities, but every nice picture that you take home, it's like a gold nugget. It's a gift. This is not a place of abundance. It's a place of like extremely precious wild moments. Besides, optically can be very, very upsetting, because this is the look of an old growth forest at the beginning of winter, after all the leaves are gone. You can see it's an optical mess. It's a maze. It's something that you don't even know where to start from to photograph. But once again, apart from good cameras, good equipment, and strong will, time is the #1 tool for any nature photographer out there. This is the only thing in on our side, and there is no way you can cut corners with these subjects. So my recommendation for the young photographers, the one who want to somehow pursue a career or simply increase the value and impact of their own imagery, is to give it time, to pick a subject close to your heart, maybe close home is even better, and give it time. The rewards are guaranteed. It's extremely democratic. Time means quality in nature photography. Again, you get to know more and more designs. This is a tuft of feathers of a jay plucked by a goshawk. So by finding this beautiful, although dramatic track at a sign in the forest, you start looking around, you start listening more, because the call of the goshawk is very, very loud. And then you find another true forest dweller, which is this very rare and elusive raptor. At least here in central Italy is one of the rarest. The female, it's a massive bird of prey, specialized in corvids or crow-like, jay-like birds, but it can hunt also pigeons, wood pigeons. It can hunt green woodpeckers. It can hunt squirrels and dormice and even hares. So it's a powerful, very massive animal. Many falconers love them. There is also a famous book for hunting, but here we are talking about a true gem of evolution. This animal can fly among the trees like a fish would fly among rocks. And to locate the center of a territory, you need to listen, you need to look at rocks for find traces of its meal. And I placed, together with my colleague Umberto, a camera trap on one of these places, just to see who was using it. And you will see what happens there. Other species are hidden in plain sight. This is a very abstract image of a longhorn, alpine longhorn beetle, Rosalia alpina, one of the most beautiful beetles, invertebrates of Europe. It's about 5 to 6 centimeters long, with this very long horns, typical of its family. It spends most of its life as a larvae, eating, crawling and feeding in dead wood. They need standing snags in full sun. So the trees which are left from maybe a calamity, and where all the surrounding trees have fallen, and therefore the sunlight is warming this larvae-bearing trees where the adults have laid their eggs. When in the hottest days of summer the adults emerge for mating, it's a feast for the eyes. You have this electric blue and gray and black shapes. So it's a real elegant animal. In the past, it used to be collected massively by unaware entomologists, and therefore became quite rare together with the specific habitat that it requires. It's not a widespread species, so it is one of the most protected and gems of these habitats. And forests, as I say, some are hidden in plain sight. They play tricks. It is very difficult to see what's hiding. I don't know if you guys see the subject of this image. I give you 5 seconds, and then I will reveal.
I can't see it.
It's hiding deer fawn left by the mom. The adaptation, it's perfect. This animal, it's not moving, being there odorless, to not be detected by wolves or foxes or bears. And I literally walked next to it, and I saw something that looked like a carpet, like a rug. And then I realized that there were 2 big watery eyes looking at me. I took a couple of snapshots. As you can see, the light is not the greatest light for photography, but the moment was so special just to see this absolutely motionless creature. And I left, of course, without, and you should never touch them. They are not abandoned. The mom is probably feeding nearby, but this is the best strategy for them to survive until they are old enough to follow the mom across the territory. Okay, next slide is uploading. And then, of course, you want to give credit to the most important species in this forest as well. This is the white-backed woodpecker. Actually, this is the lil for the white-backed woodpecker, which is again an endemic subspecies, and it's a true forest connoisseur. It feeds only on invertebrates, so even if in winter you will put peanuts or seeds, the other woodpeckers might come, but this animal will always look for bugs and caterpillars and larvae and tick larvae in the dead wood. So it's an animal which needs dead, decaying wood and unmanaged forest in order to have a thriving population. And this park and few other areas are the only places that allow the species to survive with a healthy population. Other species are so shy, so rare, so elusive that require a specific approach. This is, of course, is a wildcat. Is using, like many other animals, a fallen tree as a bridge. We placed the camera trap. The animal took basically a picture by itself. You don't see in the frame, there are 2 sensors closing a circuit and triggering the camera when a warm body, in this case the cat, moves through this invisible barrier, and there is a hint of flash just to bring some light in this dark forest. We were surprised because this is normally a species that doesn't go very high, and this forest was about 1,800 meters above sea level, because they don't like cold, they don't like snow, but they like steep terrain, and they like voles and mice, which thrive in these old woods. And the camera traps, many people think that they're, so to say, some kind of trickery, and they don't reveal the true quality of a photographer. But I tell you, it's so bloody difficult to photograph with a camera trap, because basically you are not there for weeks. Anything can happen, and anything does happen. Batteries fail, water gets into even the most waterproof cases, and rodents can chew a cable, ants can make a nest in the camera. Anything has happened, or the animal simply walks the wrong way, or just you end up with an ear or a foot of an animal. So to get a nice frame, it's always a matter of patience, of perfectioning the frame, the technique, and a lot of luck. Just to show you, and so I can take also a break, the abundance of life in this forest. which at the first sight appear devoid of it and silent. You can hear maybe some tits like calling in the background, maybe the drumming of a woodpecker, but otherwise these forests are silent, dead silent. Between end of summer and early spring, there is no sound in these places, yet they are full of life. Together with my colleague Umberto Esposito, we placed the camera trap in front of a tree, a special tree, for 1 year. We retrieved, of course, we had to change batteries every now and then. We retrieved and we edited a 2-minute show, which I will show you just to give you an idea what lives out there. Okay, so this was 1 year, 365 days packed into 2 minutes. Of course, where we had thousands of videos, but we had to select some clips. We will talk just slightly about this video later, but what is important is to show, at least for vertebrates, the huge variety of mammals, especially, that move around this special forest. The tree in the middle of the frame is a so-called rub tree. Bears use it to leave messages. They as you could see, the male, it's rubbing its back. They have some glands in the skin. They leave their smell, so other bears can know which one has passed and what's the situation. I mean, we have WhatsApp, emails. They have this kind of trees. They don't, bears, you know, you are solitary as a bear. Bears don't encounter each other very often, so when they want to avoid each other, they smell who's around. So maybe I go backward if I smell the big dominant male, or maybe I'm looking for a partner. There is a good promising smell, and I keep going along the trail. I guess I hope many of you feel like now the excitement of going out in your local forest patch. Probably not all of you are bears, but I'm sure there will be plenty of wonders to discover day and night. Yeah, so imagine quickly an overview of 1 year in the forest, starting at the end of winter, one of the last snowy days. You have this cold temperature, the crisp sky, the snow is still frozen and lingering on the branches, but after a few hours it disappears. It's actually very difficult to photograph snow on the beech trees because it lasts just a few minutes, doesn't stand the sun. And some trees already show the red buds of the leaves ready to come out in spring. So you can, by just this slight change of color in the branches, you can realize that the winter is coming over. It's a season very beautiful to be outside, and although it's maybe tough and demanding to walk with snowshoes or ski in the snow, but you can have these warm tones juxtaposed with blue tones. These are the shadows of the tree that look like watercolor washes. And then, I mean, some of you have seen already this picture last time. This is one of my most favorite encounters in this forest. I always dreamt of seeing a fox in this kind of colors. One morning it happened, and the moment was so perfect that it's all the magic of nature photography is here, to be able to freeze the moment, to be able to share it with others with joy and with the same excitement as the first time, even years later. And then snow starts to melt, the days get slightly longer and longer, and then there is a sudden change in the color of light, in the tone, and you sense that something is happening. No one can tell you, it's not written on a calendar, and the news don't report it on TV, but somehow when you develop an intimacy with a patch of forest, you realize that something is going to happen. And overnight, literally overnight, or just a couple of days, all the forest starts to appear green, and the tenderly green leaves appear on trees, and they change the look very quickly. Some trees remain red. Of course, everyone finds its own pace in life, and they create beautiful opportunities for different pictures. You can get wide and photograph the entire scenario, or you can just get crazy about details. This is what is called an eye key picture. When the sky is not interesting, you can deliberately overexpose it and transform it into just a white canvas, a white background, and enjoy the little structures and the nerves of the leaves. But it's very important to keep an hand composition, not have too much overlap, keep it clean, keep it readable. Simple is always more. But I like complexity, and forest can be very tricky to photograph because symmetry and patterns are difficult to detect in this maze of chaos. So even this old branches covered in lichens can become a beautiful subject, but it literally takes hours to find a decent frame to give justice to the shapes and forms. Again, this is a wide view, how it looks in May, or how it used to look in May. Unfortunately, with climate change, we're seeing less and less snow and shortened winters. But anyway, let's stay positive. Let's think that nothing is going to happen. Everything is going to be fine, at least for today. And yeah, so when the forest actually turns all green and the snow is gone, the animals, of course, it's time for reproducing. You remember we talked about the goshawk. They have their lair hidden in the heart of the oldest part of the forest. Of course, to take these pictures, you need a hide. You need to go into the hide at night, not to reveal yourself to the bird. It's never recommended to photograph animals in the most sensitive part of their biology, like in this case. But for a documentation project, also to show the, so to say, the most tender side of a bird of prey, for us was important to photograph and film this behavior. So we built a hide in winter before the animal came to the nest. Of course, we knew the area. We entered at night. We always left at night, and we know that for that year the animal raised the 2 chicks without any problem. And as I said, this is a female feeding. The male is on duty most of the time for the hunt, and the male never goes to feed the chicks, but it leaves the prey on a specific rock, and the female comes to take it. So there is this prey passage, which is really beautiful, and we managed to record it with a camera trap. You can hear the sound of the male ready to pass on the prey. The male has this swollen feathers under the tail, and already looks quite big and massive, but then you see the female coming. It's much bigger. Yeah, you don't even touch each other. I mean, apart from mating, male and female conduct separate lives. Maybe it's a secret for never-ending quiet. Apart from that, As I said, it's a season for all the species come to breed. Spring is extremely hectic in the diary of a nature photographer because everything happens over a few weeks. And if you miss an opportunity, nature is not waiting for you. This is the white-backed woodpecker nest. You can see the kind of grub it takes to the chicks, and the nest, as you can see, it's dug into a very, very old dead tree. That's all the life cycle of a species in one frame, at least. This when the woodpeckers are done with raising their chicks, normally in early mid-May, another bird comes into play. This is a migratory bird. It winters in Africa. It comes to our latitudes in spring. It's the colored flycatcher. It's also a forest dweller. And this is a male hovering, which means flying, standing in front of an abandoned woodpecker nest. By doing so, it attracts a nearby female, invites it into their new house. So basically, they exploit abandoned woodpecker nest to lay the eggs and raise their young. What is interesting is that this is, of course, is a frame. I also have slow-mo video, but the behavior is amazing, and you can understand that the male is so black and white because in the forest it really flashes. The female is dull brown and tends to disappear, like many female in the bird in the bird fauna, because they have to be discreet and deceptive, not to reveal the young to predators. When the leaves are not thick yet, the sun raises the bottom of the forest, and the annual plants grow very fast for a few weeks. Then the tree canopy closes in, the light, it's very scarce, and the bottom of the forest becomes a void most of the time. In these moments, even reptiles can be found in this cold forest. This is an asp viper, a melanic one, which means it's a very dark form, dark morph. Normally they are gray-brown. In this case, they turn almost black and reddish. And although it's a very poisonous animal, it's a very shy snake, and it feeds mostly on rodents and lizards and doesn't bother anyone as long as you don't sit on it. But it's a very rare inhabitant of this forest. And there are many other predators, although, again, very elusive. This is a sudden encounter with a weasel, the smallest carnivore in Europe, and one of the actually fiercest. It has a cute face, but it's it's a very, very determined and effective hunter of voles. Voles are extremely abundant in this forest because they are rich of nourishment, especially when the beech go in a mass here. As you can see on the foreground, there are some nuts. These are the seeds of the beech tree, and the voles can amass large quantities of food and explode, and in turn all the forest benefits from it. So you have foxes and owls and snakes. They all increase in number. So after a fruiting year in the forest, you have a lot of animals around. This is a young fox exploring the surrounding of its den. This is a tawny old chick waiting for to be fed by the mom. After dusk, it came out of the nest and is like, bee, 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 calling the mom. The mom is still sleeping somewhere else, tired from a long night hunting. And I mean, when I see this picture, I really feel like the torpor of an afternoon siesta, of an afternoon nap. I mean, in Italy, we are used to that. And there's nothing nicer on a cold, after a cold morning, to just take a nap in the sun, in the forest. And I often did that because when the light was not at its best. Of course, not all the mast gets eaten by rodents or insects or birds. Some luckily turn into seedlings, and the new cycle of forest it's starting. But also, when you can celebrate the birth of a new life, and sometimes it's hard to accept the death of a massive, beautiful old tree. But death in a forest or in nature in general is only a transition, a moment of transition of nutrients and other opportunities to create life in a different way. So you can see that the interior of this tree was already rotting from fungi, molds, and parasites, and a very severe winter has managed to make it let it fall. And first of all, the fallen trees offer highways for wildlife to avoid the rough terrain. They can walk very fast. This is a fox again photographed with a camera trap. In this case, for all the photography enthusiasts out there, I use a flash with a warming gel just to compensate the blue hour, the blue cast of the blue hour in the forest. And this is another animal that uses that wood. We talked about bats using using the scale of bark to protect themselves. Here is the three-toed woodpecker, tiny little bird that builds his nest, that you can see in this picture. We were very lucky, first of all, to find the nest of this rare bird, but second, the nest was visible very well from a tiny path, so we wouldn't disturb the animal, and we could even look inside. It looked like a cross section of a nest, but it was all natural. Of course, we would never dare to touch it, although it's very fragile. Here you can see a short clip. The bird is probably 6, 8, 10 grams heavy, maybe 6 grams. And you can see that its whole world is shaking when it's actually going to feed the chicks. And a severe rainstorm can destroy this little world. So the wonders, even in a boreal forest in the middle of Italy, are endless. And of course, again, death means life for other species. These are some crocuses growing on the rotting wood, fungi of every form and color. You can play a lot with fungi. Are a very favorite subject, and especially now in autumn, it's a perfect season to make a stroll, even on a wet day. Bring an umbrella, tripod, or just your macro lens or whatever lens you have, and just experiment. In this case, I use shallow depth of field to increase the size of the autofocus orange of the stems to get a more like painterly look. And there are even other subjects that can become interesting, like ferns hit by sun ray, and they remind of like tropical past of some forest here in the Mediterranean, and look for traces of other invisible but very important animals. This is the poo of many earthworms. And earthworms by biomass are the most important animal in the forest. Basically, they help transforming dead matter, leaves, decaying wood and animals into humus, so into soil. They also make holes which allow the water to enter the soil and retain moisture. Basically, they are the real engineers of a forest. If beavers are the engineers of a river, earthworms are the most important organism in a forest. And even though they are maybe not the most charismatic species to photograph, in my project, they must have, they shouldn't have been part. So spent quite some time trying to get a nice picture of them. And again, looking at the forest litter is always rewarding. Every now and then you come across one of the most spectacular species. It's the fire salamander. In the Apennines, they turn very yellow, more yellow than the alpine or European ones. Very rare, because rivers are becoming scarce here, and some of them have trouts which have been introduced in the past, and they feed on the larvae. So it's important to protect the last places where they breed, especially because amphibians, as many of you know, are facing a catastrophic decline across the world for many reasons, and climate change is really taking a serious toll on them. So we have to be very careful and protect and report all the important amphibian areas that we find in our strollings. And again, you can come across something more subtle, less visible, even a little bit intriguing in terms of color. This is the ghost orchid. It's one of the many orchids growing in the forest undergrowth, but this is a very special one. It flowers every 13, 15 years. It's a species that remains undetected again for dozens of years, and then all of a sudden you find it in the forest if you know where to look. It's one of the most rare plants in our flora. Some others are more obvious, although still rare and beautiful, like the Martagon lily, photographed from below with the short telelens, just playing around. This is a 50 millimeters 1.8 lens. Maybe it's worth not even €100, but it's capable of producing very funny background and interesting images if you know how to use it or when to use it. Then comes summer, as I say, that the canopy closes in, lights. It's hard to. It hardly reaches the forest bottom. It's again time to place camera traps for the animals move only in dark time. This is a bear smelling on a tree, but at least it can show you a bit of the size of the trees around. Water again in summer is very scarce. Here we place a camera trap for over summer at the water pool and reveal this family of wild boars coming to drink. When summer ends, it's the beginning of the deer rat season, and the bellowing sound is finally, echoing in the valleys and the mountain pastures and giving vibrance and life to this forest. And it's also the end of the season to go very high, to explore the upper limit of the forest, where some survivors, this tree is maybe 400 years old, its top has been destroyed by lightning. And can you become a friend with a tree? I am utterly fond of this very tree. Every year, this year I didn't manage it, to be honest. I try to go to visit. It's a long walk, it's a long hike, a very rough terrain. And there's this beautiful standing tree with, against all the odds, millennia of pastoralism and destruction and climate change, this tree is still there, huge. And at night, I like to sleep under and look at the stars. I had the opportunity to do it a couple of times with special permits. It's a magic experience, and really, it has always a positive impact on my mind. And then comes, of course, the most beautiful of all season, autumn. Moisture in the air turns into mist, giving a perfect background for even a branch covered in lichens and mosses can become almost like a Japanese paint and allow for very subtle images. Or again, playing with defocusing on purpose. You can just give justice to the golden, to the Indian summer, which happens always at the very end of October here. And just, playing around, enjoy the last day, the quiet, the warmth. You can still hike without covering yourself in many layers. A missile thrush is the only sound you hear on a quiet afternoon. The voles are finding amassing resources. This is found this kind of palace above fungi, and it lives in the depth of this tree, ready to pass the winter thanks to the reserves they amassed. And then comes November with storms and heavy rainfall and strong winds, and the woodpecker also is hurrying to feed on the last find the last opportunities to feed. And then all of a sudden the forest turns red and devoid of colors, or at least that's how it seems. After the sun is setting, you can use the sensibility of your camera sensor, which is much more powerful than your eye sometimes, and reveal the bluish and violet and purple cast of the forest. For me, this has started to become one of my most favorite period of the year, because it's not as obvious as the peak of foliage, is more subtle, but then it allows to deliver different pictures. And again, playing with the shapes of big trees. This picture is taken almost at night with a fast 50 millimeters lens, wide open. Consider that all these pictures are taken very far away from the car after long hikes. So sometimes to take a picture like this with long exposure meant returning home really late with the headlamp, sometimes, on difficult terrain, and missing dinner, having arguments at home because you're again late. But, it's like addictive to explore places and habitats around the world. Then comes the snow. The serious one begins very timidly, and then one morning you wake up and everything is covered in this beautiful silvery cast that lasts until the next spring, until the cycle goes on. These are some flashbacks, some pictures from our project. On the right hand side you can see Umberto, my colleague, setting up a camera trap, or half hidden under his camouflage blanket. On top you can see us inside a tree. On the upper left there is me sitting on top of a tree about 5 meters above the ground. I climbed with bare feet and I took this selfie, but then I didn't know how to get down, because then I realized that I'm not that young anymore to do these things. But it was nice to have a different perspective. So basically we have experienced this forest in every season, under every condition, and I treasure the process more than the result. So although I'm a professional, I make my living with photography, I am a really enjoying always the path that takes me to take pictures. And this is the 100 social media post that we have shared over the internet for between 2016 and 17. And eventually they have ended with the video that you've seen, this 2-minute video packed with wildlife. And as you can see here on the left, the first post of our project for the Abruzzo Lazio Molise National Park, which was called Forest Beat, you can see the first post reached about 26 likes and 29 sharing. The last post and this was the day it was posted, 5,600,000 people reached, 19,000 likes, and 1.2 thousand comments, and 38,000 sharings. And now, about 6 years later, it's gone well over 50 million views. So this to say that communication works, that imagery can be used with a purpose. With this last frame, I show you now the 5 patches of forest which have been recognized by the UNESCO at the World Heritage Site. And my final greeting, although probably I've been a little bit long, sorry, here I have to hide this, stop sharing. Do you see me now? I don't know.
Yes, we do. We do.
Perfect. You see only me.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Sorry. And yeah, my recommendation is for today, join the photo competition. As you heard, every picture you send, it's matched in funds by Canon to help Earthwatch to purchase forest, especially allowing people to enjoy nature even in difficult areas. Not everyone has the fortune or can take the decision to live close to the forest like I did, but I know that even a moment spent in your local park with a different eye can be a game changer, can make you feel much better than any screen that we indulge on way too much on a daily basis. And for tomorrow is to don't forget that you have a weapon in your hands. When you own a camera or even a sketchbook with a pencil, you own a weapon. You can tell the others what matters. We are in an era where every single moment can provide an opportunity to express love for nature, respect, and trying to change, turn the tide, as someone says. So I believe that it starts from the bottom. Change always started from the bottom. And telling your neighbor, telling your friend, your schoolmate, your partner how much you love nature, it's a beginning for many of us to start changing their attitude toward the environment. So, and the camera is a super powerful tool because pictures speak to everyone despite origin, language, culture. It's a universal language. I think I said enough, and I'm sorry if I went a little bit over with time.
Thank you so much, Bruno. That was really incredible. And thank you for sharing that with us. It's amazing for me to think that next to such densely populated areas like Naples lies the place of such wonder and beauty, like the Abruzzo National Park. So we now have time for some questions. I can see they're starting to come in the Q&A chat, but please feel free to ask other questions. We have a bit of time. I'll start reading the first one. What research is going on there, and what conclusions can we draw, if any, for how to manage nature in other environments?
So there are many research down. Thank you for the question first. Many research ongoing in this park. Now, for example, we'll start a new project after assessing the age and the structure of this forest, and also there was a study on canopy, so on treetops and how trees intersperse and the number of leaves, many things. What is very interesting is that these old trees are reaching this age because they are exposed to many climatic stress. As I said before, the trees often die because they get too big and exposed to wind and snow. So these trees are kind of like old people living on islands, feeding very little, having a very low metabolism and growing slowly. So actually the oldest trees are not the biggest. And that's how they manage to overcome winters and droughts and maybe not draw our attention to get a nice plank. So the research it has shown that these trees are actually survivors of several stresses. And now what is very important is to assess the carbon stocking of this old growth forest. As you all know, there is a common sense that investing in trees is the best way to prevent to reduce the presence of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which is true, but it's not always the same. Old forest might stock carbon in bigger quantity, and especially for a longer time, and release it in a very, very slow process. So you can compare young managed forest or a very old growth forest, and you realize that maybe on a daily basis, the young forest seems to stock more carbon, but over a century, the old forest, it's a better investment. And why do I say this? It's very difficult for government to convince people to say, let alone a forest, don't cut, don't log, it will be a better, you will have more return in the future. It's much easier to say, even a kind of, half managed forest can provide some carbon stocking. And I think it's important to use science to create a critical baseline for nature enthusiasm to really understand how this complex dynamics work.
Great. I'll ask a question myself now, waiting for other questions to come in, if any. So could you talk a bit more about the personal challenges that you found in your work? I know you touched a bit upon this, but you showed us some photos taken at night, photos of animals like brown bears. So obviously, there must have been some tough, lonely periods for you, or could you talk a bit about the challenges in your work?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Monica. There's always a challenge. I mean, a failure doesn't leave traces in my job. So basically, you don't see signs of failures, although they sometimes are more relevant than the little successes. What you see, it's literally a handful, a collection of lucky moments, successful moments when everything came together over many years. This is a luxury to have so much time. I always, when I undertake a project, I know that I will give it time. I will devote time. If I don't have time, I don't even start, because I'm also aware that my presence can disturb animals, can disrupt. So I try to limit my presence to the minimum. And because I have maybe a bigger goal, I share the goal with conservationists and administrators to provide communication tools, to be a witness, to show what is out there worth protecting. Challenges are many. Solitude, sense of discouragement, because photography, it's something that you press the shutter when you see something that interests you or touches your strings, or it's compelling enough. But my job, most of the time, it's about making these things materialize in front of my camera. So I set out with a vision in my head of something that I've even never seen in my eyes, and probably I will never see. This is when it comes to the camera trap. When it comes to frame an animal in the perfect patch of forest, sometimes I literally choose the background and wait for a subject to come into frame, because I want to show the context. I want to show where the animal lives. A portrait is always beautiful and effective on social media because you can see a fluffy animal. But if you really want to show the importance of the habitat, you have to have literally the bigger picture. So it is mostly a psychological challenge. Sometimes it's a physical one. You're cold, you're wet, you get into the once again into come across a rainstorm, or you walk in snow and it's extremely demanding because you have this heavy backpack with all your lenses, and sometimes you just fail. I remember I've been waiting for a few mornings for a pine marten to appear among some beautiful trees on a spring week, and I literally spent, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 mornings waiting motionless. On the last morning, it started raining. It was 9 o'clock. I said, it's enough. Let's pack it. It was raining. I wanted to protect my camera. The moment I packed everything, there it came. The pine marten appeared, stood on its back, like beautiful, fluffy in this forest. And this is one of the many mental pictures that you have to treasure. You cannot get angry. I mean, at least you are there witnessing beauty. You're not stuck in traffic, going to the office, so you cannot complain. This is the real reward.
It's easy to forget looking at beautiful photos. They seem effortless, but there's so much work and dedication that goes on in the back.
It's a lifestyle. It's not a profession. It's a daily life.
We have one last question. So for you personally, what is the most memorable moment you've experienced in the forest?
Oh, this is a good question. As I said, there are many. I think of all the nice moments when you know, I was snowing in the forest. Yes, I do. I was checking for the goshawk nest. They start calling and getting territorial in late winter, and then they lay eggs in spring. But in order not to disturb, I would be far away in the forest, sitting and just listening. And I always have a medium telezoom, 100, 400 millimeters on my lap, no matter where I go. Even if I drive from my home to some place, I always carry along a camera with a medium telezoom, because it saved many days. So I had the camera on me, and it was snowing, and I had it was wet snow. I had my shell with the hoodie up, and the goshawks were not calling, nothing was moving. And I think I was taking a couple of snapshots of the forest. I would be maybe 100 meters away from the nest, hidden from between the trees, just to listen. And then I felt like I was watched. So I literally just turned my head, and behind me there was a wolf, all covered in snow, and the snow was melting on it. And I can remember that there was some snow on the snout, like even on its nose. And it was perfect. The forest was bluish, it was the snow falling, this wolf was sitting and looking at me. And the moment I even thought of taking a picture and turning the rest of my body, it vanished. I walked to the place where the wolf was sitting, because I thought, did I dream it, or was it real? And there were tracks to reveal that the animal has been there. And I missed probably the best wolf shot of my entire life, but I still remember nowadays perfectly all the details. So at the end, you know, you have to accept, count on your blessing, accept the gift that nature gives you. Since I am very bad with promoting myself, I forgot to put the hashtag. I don't know if you guys see it. Ooh, no, it disappeared. At Bruno D'Amicis photo. You can follow me and find all my contacts and links and whatever. So if you have more questions, also feel free, and I will answer in a lifetime, but I always answer.
Thank you, Bruno. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us today, and a real joy to look at your photos. And I hope that we can all get some inspiration from your work to go out and work on our personal photography projects. So thank you so much for
Thank you for the
wisdom
opportunity
and the inspiration that you've given us to go out and connect a bit more with nature. It's been a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you for hosting, and thanks everyone to staying with us for so long, and for being part of this. All the best. Enjoy the outdoors. Enjoy autumn. Bye-bye.
Bye.